and welcome to the Board of Education's third FY25 operating budget work session. Today we will finalize the review of the Superintendent's FY 2025 operating budget request. The order of review is reflected in the agenda. Staff will provide an overview of the Superintendent's recommended operating budget, followed by a review of the budget by chapter. Our second work session was held on Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and our first work session was held on Tuesday, January 16th, 2024, virtually due to inclement weather. In addition, the board held two hearings on January 18th, 2024, and January 25th, 2024, both at 6 p.m. for the public to provide testimony. I would like to remind everyone that the board is scheduled to take tentative action on the operating budget at our board meeting on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2024. As we go through the remaining chapters, I urge staff to point out pertinent issues that may be of concern to the board. As always, board members are free to ask questions at any point during the presentations and request staff to provide information on specific issues. At this time, I will have my fellow board members introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Saeed.
Hello everyone, Sammy Saeed, student member of the board, and I'm totally thrilled to be here today.
Good morning, Shebra Evans, District 4. Good to see everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Lynn Harris. I use she, her pronouns. Happy to get to work today.
Good morning, Brenda Wolf, District 5.
Good morning, buenos dias. Grace Rivera Oven, District 1.
Good morning, Julie Yang, District 3.
If this is your first time watching our budget work sessions for this year, I'd like to introduce Shannon Pettifoot, who is our board senior analyst. Shannon, do you have any comments or questions for us?
Yes. Good morning, everyone in the room and those of you joining online. Today, we'll be covering the remaining chapters of the FY25 operating budget, which are chapters 9 on human capital management, Chapter 10, Finance, and Chapter 11, which is Administration and Oversight. Throughout the budget process, the board has sent several questions to me, and I've been working with administration to get answers and more information in support of the board taking tentative action on the proposed operating budget on Thursday, February 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McKnight, do you want to get us started with your opening remarks?
Absolutely. So good morning, President Silvestri and members of the Board of Education. Today we are holding our third operating budget work session. We have held two, and this should be our final one in which we cover our final chapters. As I shared in many of our previous work sessions, today is an opportunity for us to get into the details of each chapter. And as we get into those details of chapters, please engage, ask questions, clarification, whatever it may be as it relates to the components of those chapters. We do have three remaining chapters, as Ms. Pettifoot just said. Today we're covering operating budget that covers human resources and development first, second, finance, and then third, administration and oversight. So those are the three remaining chapters that we're going to cover today, so we look forward to delving into that discussion. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hull so we can hop right into it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. McKnight, President Silvestri, members of the board. During our first two work sessions, we covered the first 8 chapters of the operating budget, which encompasses the vast majority of the money in our $3.3 billion proposed budget. In the first two work sessions, we covered schools, academics, special education, technology, facility management, among other areas. Today, we will conclude with 3 smaller but mighty chapters, which include, as have been stated, human resources, finance, and then administration and oversight. As we get into the human resources chapter, I know that there's been a lot of discussion around the career pathways program that is housed in human resources, and so when Ms. Key joins us at the table, she will talk through some of the proposed changes and how she envisions the program moving into next year, maintaining that program even though there has been a reduction in staff. If there, of course, is a desire of the board to add staff back to that critical program, that certainly is something that we would be open to. Also, just wanting to highlight in the HR chapter, there were some proposed changes that were included in the superintendent's recommended budget that subsequently, through additional conversations, we have decided to kind of roll back. And so what is included in today's presentation will represent what is included in the published published budget book because we didn't want to confuse anybody, but then she'll talk about the changes that we're going to request the board to kind of roll back to the previous state. And so we'll cover that there. As always, we look forward to your questions. We will pause after each chapter to answer questions, and so if you can hold your questions until then, that would be great. And I will turn it back over to the superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hull. So I just wanted to make sure we had that point clarified, the last point that you were just mentioning. You are referencing the part in the budget book that would have reflected changes in the Office of Human Resources and Development that were then retracted.
Right, so
After the budget book was printed. Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that the budget printing process happens December, and we're now in January, and I don't know if we'll get into that discussion, but, you know, of course, there had been quite a bit of feedback and some concerns around some initial changes that were done, but Mr. Hull and Ms. Key will speak to that, which is why that would have shifted from what was previously printed. Okay, thank you so much. I think we can move forward. Mr. Riley?
Thank you.
Did, Ms. Webb, did you say that Mrs. Madrasky is online?
She is. I don't know if her picture is online, but she is with us and listening.
Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge.
My video's on.
Oh, there you go. Good
Sorry,
morning.
I don't know if you can see me or not, but my video is on.
Yes, okay. Welcome. Mr. Riley.
Just looking for the PowerPoint now.
Okay.
Alrighty, next slide. So as mentioned, this shows the work that we've done so far over the last 3 weeks, and we're going to be going through those last 3 chapters now. Just to kind of reiterate kind of what we've been saying over the last few sessions, what you're going to see in each chapter is a pie chart. That pie chart represents what's in that particular chapter's budget in full. They're going to be similar to the pie charts that are in the budget book, and then each of the chiefs or associates is going to go through the changes, how we build our budget. So the first thing is realignments, which they'll talk about. Next thing is efficiencies and reductions, and then if there are any strategic priorities within that chapters. So I just wanted, so details of this can be found in the appropriate chapters here, so if there are any questions about that. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Ms. April Key to come to the table to talk about human capital management.
Good morning, Dr. McKnight, Ms. Silvestri, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about the Office of Human Resources and Development. The Office of Human Resources and Development is intentional in our mission to ensure we have diverse, high-quality adults to support the learning, growth, and development of every Montgomery County public school student. The departments that make up the Office of Human Resources and Development are collectively responsible for the professional life cycle for an employee, from attracting to recruiting, onboarding, development, retention, to eventual exit for each of our 24,907 employees. The work of our office is guided by the Maryland Blueprint, the Strategic Plan, the Anti-Racist System Action Plan, and the Theory of Action. And it is structured with guardrails that include policies, regulations, and the negotiated agreements. As we learn and grow as an office, we acknowledge precedent and establish best practice, as well as ongoing stakeholder feedback, guide us in our request for concierge-level service to all whom we interact with and serve. The Department of Human Capital Management is committed to hiring for diversity throughout the organization and works tirelessly to overcome the current national challenges of recruitment and retention. As of January 26, we have hired 1,294 new teachers. Additionally, the team has secured 74 new open contracts for next year, which is an increase of 38 more than this time last year. The team continues to hire support services with 140 positions filled since the beginning of January. The team continues to, the team continues to hire services with 140 positions since the start of the school year. We continually try to fully staff all permanent bus driver, operators, and attendant routes. We currently have 2,491 active substitutes with 128 permanent subs supporting 99 different schools. It is also worth noting that our resignations in both teacher and support service roles are significantly less than this time last year. The Department of Professional Growth Systems is enhancing professional growth and development across all employee groups. The team uses data and feedback to identify and develop training to support our employees' success in their current roles and to enhance skills and knowledge as employees seek to promote within the organization. In light of budget shortfalls, we have developed a plan to enhance and differentiate the services we provide to our support professionals. Individuals needing job-embedded training or want to increase their access to other SEIU positions will receive support and training opportunities from the Department of Strategic Initiatives. Support professionals aspiring to become teachers will receive support and mentoring from the instructional specialists in DPGS. And those aspiring to business operations will receive support from the administrative team in DPGS. The Department of Compliance and Investigation is committed to launching prompt, impartial, and thorough investigations to promote a safe, fair, and productive work environment within our school system. Responding to feedback from internal and external stakeholders, the DCI team is enhancing communication and timelines as they partner with system leaders in response to employee-related concerns and challenges. The community of practice for investigations has been convened and the work is underway. And we can go to the slide, please. The Human Capital Management Department is $24.2 million. Number one, salaries and wages account for 73% of the budget. $2.6 million of the salaries are funded through Title II, Part A grant, which funds 17 consulting teacher positions. Contractual services, 1% of the budget. $200,000 is used to support work around background screening and advertising. $80,000 is used to support work funded through Title II, Part A grant, and research for better teaching. Supplies and materials, also 1% of the budget, is $200,000 to support the general program and office supplies, as well as training supplies funded through Title II and Part A grant. The last 25% of the budget, $4.5 million supports tuition reimbursement for employees, as well as the tuition reimbursement related to partnership programs. $1.2 million supports the employee benefits for positions, as well as training support funded through Title II and Part A grants. Next slide, please. Realignments. Within the Office of Human Resources and Development, realignment for supporting services, part-time salary, and contractual services to fund a 1.0 classification coordinator specialist. We have hundreds of job descriptions and one employee who is responsible for any reclassifications, any time we abolish and reconstitute, anytime we look at compensation changes in order to improve the quality or the number of candidates we get at any particular time. And so we know and value that work is important, and in order for us to remain competitive, we need that kind of support in the office.
The Employee Assistance Program had been a portion contracted out for services from an outside organization, and then the remaining services provided in-house. When we looked at the program and how it was being used and the frequency of employees accessing it, we found that employees access the on-the-grounds, in-place people that are employees of the district at a greater rate than we were accessing the company. So we are including an increase to the number of staff in the EAP program. The Division of A&S Staffing and Development for the $378,137 is no longer being looked at this time. And I can provide details as needed.
Can you just say what A&S stands for?
Sure, administrative, yeah.
You can say it again
Yes.
for the public?
Administrative and supervisory. Proud.
Guys, what,
Ms. Wolf?
could you just go over that employee assistance program line again? I just wasn't.
Sure. The
Wasn't
Employee
clear.
Assistance Program, we had a contract with an agency where we could call in. They were never in person. Their resources were always only a phone call, and then they would direct the employee where they could get the service that they needed.
So it's no longer going to be a contract, it's going to be a permanent employee?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yes, ma'am. Next slide, please.
Ms. Key, just clarify, you said that the A&S staffing and development, that line item is no longer there.
Yes.
We'll continue with what we have currently.
Yes, we will continue with what we have in place currently.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Realignments continued. The funds that were identified in the first bullet, none of that is happening. So we'll move to the second bullet. A 1.0 supervisor position in the Department of Talent Acquisition is realigned to support a 1.0 assistant director position in the new certification and continuing education unit. And that is our team that looks at certifications and ensuring that both our certificated employees are appropriately licensed to do the jobs that we have. And we had quite a bit of change that is happening in the state around certification. And so the responsibilities of that job are changing. Next slide. Oh,
The first bullet is.
no longer. Yes, it's eliminated. We're remaining the same.
Do we ask questions about this now, or?
If we could finish, I think
finish
they
it?
said, we have the 2 more slides before the discussion.
Efficiencies and reductions. Office of Human Resources and Development will remove a 1.0 staffing assistant position and $142,000 in contractual services. The Department of Talent Acquisition will lose 1 career pathways manager, 1 career pathways specialist, and $100,000 from dues, registration, and fees. While the career pathways program will not be removed, it is the staffing that is being removed and that work being divided in other areas of our department, and then some partnering with the Office of Strategic Initiatives. DPGS, the Department of Professional Growth Systems, will lose 1 consulting teacher. And while we know this work is so critical, we also know that that department has 3 people who work on the MCAP side, 3 people who work on the SEU side. With the bulk of the consulting teachers, those numbers is the place that we could, if we had to, take a hit. And so we've taken that hit with 1 consulting teacher. Next slide. We're doing an expenditure shift for NEO, which is a critical part of onboarding for our new educators. So the $224,000 will move off of ESSER and into the operating budget. We have an accelerator in compliance and investigations, and we're looking to fund an additional coordinator and 3 investigators to support the work that goes on in DCI. And I can take your questions.
Start on this side of the room, Ms. Yang.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. This is related to budget, but I have a question now. Education is a people business, right? Hiring, recruiting so that we are fully staffed is essential. I have a question now. We have a hiring freeze at the moment and a spending freeze at the moment. I want to understand, are we fully staffed in our recruiting with our recruiting team? Is it fully staffed at the moment?
Our recruiting team is not fully staffed at the moment.
Is it impacted by the hiring freeze?
It is impacted in that I would need to request permission to be able to advertise the recruiter positions. So yes, we have 1, and we're looking to hire 3 professional recruiters.
So, as a school system, would you say the bulk of our hiring happened in the spring to catch the college graduates so that we can be staffed for next school year?
I would say that is absolutely correct.
Okay, so then I want to get on the record saying that I want the system to consider that as an essential position. I know that we have talked about essential positions we can be looked at this moment of hiring freeze. I would like that to be looked at and addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Veraven.
Thank you. If we could go to slide 5. And I like to concur with my colleague, Ms. Yang, with what she said, so we're not repetitive. But the 1.0 supervisor position, Ms. Keys, and the parent talent acquisition, could you just explain to me what are we doing here?
Sure. So currently the position is a supervisor, and the roles and responsibilities of that job have changed in both complexity and the number of people that she supervises. And so we are aligning the title and compensation to the work that we've identified as being different than what her work was in the past.
And what was the work?
So she is responsible for the certification, looking at certifications for teachers, for OLPs, other licensed personnel, administrators, folks who, any type of certification that is required in order for individuals to do their job, and then maintaining information to them, like license or certifications, are expiring or additional coursework is needed. She provides very detailed direction for applicants so that they can meet the state's certification requirements.
Okay. I have another question if other
We could let Ms. Rivera finish.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, so we had, I think for the first time in a few years, we had such a success in recruiting minority teachers, correct? I want to make sure that those positions, the folks who are doing that recruitment and have done the recruitment, are those positions being realigned or eliminated? I guess that's my question.
We are looking to hire professional recruiters as opposed to the staffing that we had, which was previously a master teacher and a previous school administrator.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
So we're going to eliminate that team then?
Well, there's only one person left of the team. The teacher has returned to the classroom.
Okay.
And then we're going to hire recruiters.
So I guess my question is, if something's working so well, why are we breaking something that doesn't need to be fixed?
So I agree that there has been good work done. However, we're not able to track all of it to recruitment. We're not able to produce that kind of data. So it is, in my mind, best practice that we have professional recruiters who have a very impactful social media presence, who are able to go out and sell Montgomery County. Because if you're a teacher, we know that teaching is your focus. Our focus is trying to sell you on coming to the DMV area and sell you on the fact of the lifestyle, the diversity, all the things that come along with living here. And in order to establish relationships, I can't just have two people out there. I need a team of people out there who are able to go past establishing relationships with the universities to instead creating pipelines from universities. For instance, Tuskegee University and HBCU, the town that supports the college doesn't have enough students in the community to warrant them having student teachers. So in this situation, we would want our recruiter to build a relationship and put us out there to be a home for teachers to come and do their internships when it's student teaching time, so that then they can come here for the 8 to 12 weeks of student teaching, learn about our community, and then maybe want to stay. So I think the days of going to a job fair and talking to people is over. It's a different world. We need to have an impactful social media presence. One of the things that the team is doing now, both the ANS team and the talent acquisition team, is geo-sourcing. We weren't doing that when I came here, and that's when we can advertise a position based on a person's interest in a zip code area. So we just have to move in the direction of the individuals that we are trying to attract. And they are not at job fairs, they're out in the world on their phones, on their technology.
So I guess my question is, if you already have a person that has that connection with the community and it's been doing a good job, why can we not just reinforce with additional support to keep that work going? I guess I'm still a little bit not
sure.
I understand where you're coming from, but I'm just trying to understand the logic behind that. We know that this has worked in the past, and we have attracted more than ever minority teachers with this model. I
can't give you data to prove that. That's the problem.
Well, we know how many teachers we hire, how many were.
I don't know how many were recruited. I'm not able to provide that data. The team isn't able to provide me with that data.
Oh, they don't have that data. They
do not have that data.
So I think what she's saying is that it could be many variables that have effect, not just the recruiter position.
Okay.
And she's down to one, so she has to rebuild the team anyway, so why not rebuild it with professional recruiters?
And aligned with our anti-racist audit and how HR, at the beginning you said that we want to maintain a diversity group of folks. It is really important that that diversity is maintained, I think.
Critical.
And that there's not a lot of folks, especially Latinos, represented in that group. So for me, that is also very important that we look like the kids that we're serving, because there's not many folks I don't think in any of those positions that we can say that are at a director's position or even at a supervisor position that represents diversity in that group.
And I appreciate the comment, and the team, has done a great job over the past couple of years, really increasing the diversity of the teachers specifically that we're bringing on board. I think if you look at our overall teaching staff that is in place right now, it's about 30% diverse. Of the new candidates that we hired for this current school year, it was about 50% diverse. So, we only turn over about 5% of our teaching staff each year, so the, transformation of the entire system is going to take a long time, but that is a significant improvement in the right direction. And that focus that Dr. Susan Marks brought and now that Ms. Key brings to really focusing on the intentionality of diversity and where we're recruiting and how we're recruiting, that will all maintain and actually, be elevated even more. So we share your priority there.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And also for me, it's also us as an HR department looking like the folks we want to recruit, I think should also be, part of our goal in moving forward.
Ms. Wolf.
I want to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues, but I also want to understand, I think some of the concern you're hearing from Grace and Julie is that when you move workloads to other people, are you then overburdening them and they slow down even more? Because one of the things that we've been hearing for years is how long it takes from application to hire. And I don't know if we've had data on it before, but I don't know if we're getting better at it because we're actually losing a lot of the people that we're going out trying to recruit because other districts seem to be able to get it done quicker. So are we doing anything to improve the efficiencies in HR?
Yes, we have done some things to improve
are they in this budget?
No, they are not. They have just been part of the working model. For instance, one of the things that the coordinators used to do was do a preliminary interview for a candidate prior to moving them forward to a hiring manager. And that would whether they met the qualifications to be a teacher or not. And scheduling those preliminary interviews is overwhelming. So one of the things that changed is if you meet the qualifications to be a teacher, then we get you as quickly as we can to the hiring manager, because the 3 questions that HR is asking are a barrier. We should not be determining who can make it to see a hiring manager. We're just supposed to be making sure that the applicant is well vetted and meets the qualifications for the job. So we took a step out to improve our process.
Okay, well, the reason I asked that question is because I'm like Ms. Yang. I think that your unit, it's essential that you be staffed so that we don't slow down because we're in competition for teachers all over. I have a question, though, about the classification coordinator. We are an awfully large organization, and I know teachers, that's pretty easy to do, but we're in the process of looking at reclassifying a lot of jobs. Are 2 people going to be able to do that? Because, we're looking at professionalizing some departments, which is going to require a whole rewrite of job descriptions.
Mrs. Wolf, you are absolutely correct. 2 people is not sufficient to get the work done, but in this particular shortfall, I could only ask for the 1 accelerator. So I agree with you. Human resources is critical to all of the operations in the district, and we don't have accounts for training that are enormous, supply budgets that are enormous. When we cut, we are cutting the people who do the work.
I think it's important when we go to the council that they understand that too, because they're looking at investigative reports that say we need to do this, this, and this, and we're not able to staff up to do all of that as quickly as we would like. The other question I have is, well, it's not a question, it's a comment, the same one I made on your other things. When you remove work from one person and start trying to spread it out, I don't get a sense of workload, so then I get a sense that some people may be overwhelmed. And I'm thinking, I know we've talked about the career pathways, but I'm hoping that somebody is at least, when you do these shifts, monitoring to make sure that the people that this work is being spread out to are not overwhelmed.
We are, and the transition of the Pathways program to the work of the Department of Professional Growth Systems. We're working on making it seamless, maintaining the commitment to provide one-to-one support, and adding ambassadors that previously identified for their exemplary contributions. As I said before, anytime it's cuts in HR, it's people.
Sure. Thank you. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have.
Did you have a follow-up question, Ms. Yoon?
Yeah. Two follow-up questions. I hate to beat the dead horse, but in terms of a career pathway, my question number one is, it's more like a comment, and I also want to get your opinion. Because if you look at our supporting staff, it's the most diverse body of workforce in the system. Every cases are very individualized with people's backgrounds in terms of experiences or education. So it is one thing to say, okay, we will make the para-education training programs incorporated into one department, the career pathway mentoring program into another department. We'll farm the career pathway leadership development program in another department. We'll do the ambassador program in another department. What I don't see is these people need personal connection, need a place to anchor them. And so that's my comments. I think that is what the individualization that needs to happen to help our supporting staff. That's my comment. So I really would like you to think about, I understand completely and agree, but HR is where because education is a people business, that this department I take a particular interest in. Okay, that's comment number one. Comment number two is, can you tell me currently our consulting teachers, what's their caseload right now? What is the national recommended caseload?
So right now we have 554, first year probationary teachers. Half of them are conditionally certificated. And Dr. Stanislaus, how many? Is it 25 per?
29 consultant teachers and 2 co-leads. And the caseloads are 1 to 24. Nationally, it should be closer to 1 to 16.
So 1 to 24 is our current caseload, and 1 to 16 is the national recommended.
We just need it repeated in a microphone for the public.
Yeah, that was my question as well. So if she can come and speak to that, that would be great.
Thought I was using my cafeteria voice.
Can you share how many also share how many we currently have?
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So for our consulting teachers, we currently have 29 consulting teachers with a full caseload. We have 2 co-chairs, co-leads, who also have a smaller caseload, but they handle the bulk of some of the technical and the training for consulting teachers. Our consulting teachers, we have about a 1 to 24, 23, 25-ish caseload, just depending on their certification and best matches. Originally, the PGS was designed over 20 years ago to have a 1 to about 16 caseload. We haven't seen that in a very long time. However, usually we get a little closer to about a 1 to 20. This year is a little higher. We do have 623 teachers that we're currently supporting in the system, the bulk of them being P1s or probationary year 1 teachers.
Right.
And when you think about having teachers who are conditionally certified, working toward that certification, it's no longer just kind of a 1-to-1, it's almost like a 1 to 1.5.
Yeah.
The amount of time that goes into supporting those teachers who have not had the teacher kind of pre-service experience, so to speak. And then you have teachers who are currently receiving support as underperforming teachers. And that time is also needed to support those teachers as well. It's a little greater than what you would have for a general teacher coming in who's gone through one of the certification programs and is kind of just ready to launch. So it's a little different.
Yeah, so I thank you for that information. I know that last year we have an increased number of teachers that's conditional certified, right? And in our effort to staff our special education department, we especially have a lot of special educators are conditionally certified. So, and I feel the consulting teachers' role is really important in helping them to be successful in our school system and retain them in this profession. So I am really looking at this time. I know the difficulty for your department trying to build up some of the units and so have to pull, but I feel like we cannot keep robbing Peter to pay Paul within this department. Okay, I'm done with my comment. Thank you, Madam President.
Mrs. Modrowski?
Yeah, hi. I just have a follow-up question along all of these lines. I was curious, what data did you use to make the decision to cut the career pathways? I'm following up on the, my colleagues' points about why we're fixing something that's not broken.
Thank you. We looked at the services that were first of all, we looked at everything because we were looking to make several cuts and looking for an opportunity to provide a similar, if not enhanced, service to a group of employees. So when we looked at what they currently receive support, we looked at refining that support by teachers, providing the support for those SEIU members who want to become teachers so that they're getting the support necessary for the career field that they're looking to enter. We also determined that as individuals become interested in the business administration part, that we would have McBoa, folks who are in DPGS, to support them in that work. And so we currently have in the Office of Strategic Initiatives paraprofessional training that happens there that is system-wide. And so they would be looking at providing more training, I think, and opportunities for mentorship through that office, knowing that we are just trying to maintain services for our employees amidst the budget shortfall.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm curious though, did you work with SEIU on making these changes? Because from what I'm told, they have increased their number of people who have gone through this program by, I think I was told 144% or something like that.
I am not aware of that 144% increase, but yes, I did work with members of SEIU as we looked at how do we best serve this group of employees and really narrow our focus to align with their career ambitions.
Okay.
Mrs. Evans?
You know what? You had mentioned earlier you were going to go around, so Ms. Harris had her light on a while ago. I'll just let her go, and then I'll go next. Go ahead, Ms. Harris.
Thank you. A couple questions. So first of all, I do want to just say how very much I appreciate the work, intentional work, to professionalize our Office of Human Resources and Development. That is an office that is populated with work that there are individually true professions, like recruiting is a profession, human resources is a profession, compliance and investigation work is a profession, and we have not traditionally filled those roles with people who are members of that profession. We have filled them in other ways, so I do appreciate that the work very much. And I just, and I'm trying to put all the pieces together here. And I'm looking, first question I have, so you Dr. Stanislaus went over the current cadre of our consulting teachers at 29. I'm looking at slide 3 that talks about having 17, I think you said 17 consulting teachers that are funded through a grant.
She's coming back.
Oh. Okay. Sorry. Getting your steps in.
What's the question again?
So I'm just looking at on slide 3, under the item 1, salaries and wages. I think you mentioned that there are 17 consulting teacher positions funded by a grant.
Right.
And so does that mean of the 29 that we currently have, that, 12 are funded through MCPS-based budget?
Correct.
17 are funded through a grant. And then on slide 6, we're reducing one of the MCPS 12 consulting teacher positions.
I believe so. So I can speak to the 17. So we have to, the Title IIA, and you all know, is designed to support professional learning, professional development. The 17 that are earmarked, we really kind of differentiate the approach that those consulting teachers take. So they have to have a certain number of staff that they support that are conditional, or they do some levels of training. So it is differentiated from kind of the consulting teachers that fall under local. It's all under one umbrella, but the work they do is quite targeted. So I think it came out of the local budget. So, one thing I will say is that our department and office, we're really, really creative. I don't know if it's because I'm from Brooklyn and we know how to make a dollar out of 15 cents. But we will continue to be very creative in the approaches that we take. Ms. Yang, you mentioned earlier the conditionally certified teachers in special education. And so one of the things that we've done was we've partnered with Johns Hopkins University. And with that partnering, we're helping those teachers to become certified. We're pushing on a pilot program in which those teachers will have an opportunity to be supported by a consulting teacher over a 2-year process. So those teachers, those consulting teachers who are under the Title IIA grant, those would be the teachers that we would consider, the consulting teachers we would consider to support with this 2-year target. So their work is a little differentiated, but that's how we get really creative, by partnering with our higher ed partners in order to get these grants to allow us to do this work, and working closely with our special education department as well.
Okay. So, and that Title IIA funding, that grant is stable. So we're not, okay, awesome. And then looking also at slide 3, so when we're down under item 4, and there was a grant funding, for $1 million in grant funding for benefits, is that also Title IIA? No. Yes, no.
Yes. I only know the programmatic.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting okay. All right, thank you. And so that is also stable, so we're not worried about a grant that we're only going to have for another year or something like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The JHU grant is a 3-year run. We have another grant that will end in August. So we do get these kind of overlapping opportunities. And the department, I'm in a wonderful department, very creative people. We come together, we look for these opportunities so that we can continue to create, spaces for our teachers, for our support professionals, for our principals to engage in professional learning opportunities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then moving on, I'm just going to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues around the classification coordinator role. I'm not even sure I understand fully what that does. I mean, I have an idea. I'm not fully sure. But
I'm happy to give you some ideas about what she does. So currently, we did not have a, for example, recruiter position. So I went to our analyst and said, I need a recruiter position that looks similar to a recruiter at a university or a recruiter for a sport team, a professional recruiter who understands social media and the impact of social media and how to do things like geo-sourcing and just very strategic about the population of individuals who are graduating. So she goes and looks at job descriptions from all industries and qualifications and salary ranges, and then puts together a proposal that then we look over, goes to legal, and everybody has their say-so about it. And then she determines where on the pay scale it goes. We reach out to the right bargaining unit to say, this is the new job that we're creating, this is what it looks like, and just make sure everybody's on board. But we can't do very many of those a year with just one person.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And so when a department wants to abolish and reconstitute, currently we open it up, and it's kind of like the Supreme Court. We select the ones that we're going to do for the year, and then a few emergencies pop up. But we're limited just because of the number of people we have doing that work.
Just related to that, was this an accelerator in last year's budget that didn't make the cut?
That's right. I was going to.
I believe it was.
Yes, very familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Sorry,
and,
Ms. Harris.
yeah, no, but I appreciate that, and I do have some concerns about the multiple layers of bureaucracy in that process, because I do want to make sure that that we do not dilute our job classifications and the professional level expertise required to do them because of other the concerns of other units, because it's very important that we have people who have the qualifications and the professional background that we need to do the work. And so, but anyway, thank you very much for that. And I did have a question about, in slide 7, the accelerator for the Department of Compliance and Investigations with 1 coordinator and 3 new investigative specialists. What is the current complement of that office?
Let me just think for a minute. We have the director, we have 3 coordinators, and I believe we're up to 4 TPT investigators and 1 permanent investigator.
Okay, so definitely need to augment that. And what's the difference between, you said, a director and a coordinator?
So the director runs the department, is responsible for the oversight, and then the coordinators do preview, they do investigations, but they also assist the investigators with problem solving or strategy or whatever is needed. But there is some differentiation in the work where the coordinators do a lot of the sexual harassment piece, although the whole investigative team can do them. Currently, it's been divided up that way. And so as we come out of the community of practice, we hope that we will have recommendations that align us closely with industry standards.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Evans.
Great. So I'm so glad Dr. Stanislaus is still sitting here. Yes, no, you can go. No, but much of what my colleagues have stated is something that I do feel necessary to repeat. I was glad that Ms. Yang mentioned the consulting teachers, because I did want to ask all the questions that she asked, and I was going to also just jog my memory. That was also something that was in the budget last year, that based on us not being able to fully fund, we weren't able to actually get that consulting teacher that the board had recommended putting in the budget. That is correct, right? And I just wanted to just talk a bit, just this is really important, right? You talked about us having 623 new teachers. As we think about oftentimes facing a teacher shortage, I think probably, but we haven't collected this data, that our newer teachers probably have a heavier caseload or heavier lift, particularly as we've come out of COVID. the pandemic just really changed how our kids are learning and doing, and how we are actually instructing and teaching our students. We had a math teacher from Blair High School just come last week and say, after being in the system for 21 years, she had to take a different approach and just really kind of think about how to engage her students. So I want us to try to keep as many teachers as we can. We are a premier school system, and one of the only districts that I know of that offers consulting teachers, right? And then, can you tell me, have we lost any consulting teachers? So I know that we were going to put some in the budget. Have there been any consulting teachers that have maybe moved out of their teaching, like consulting, like have we decreased our number?
No, we haven't
Okay.
decreased, with the exception of the reduction for this year. I know last year, you're correct, that at one point there were up to 5 accelerators, 3 for counselors, and that's something that we don't do currently, and 2 additional just general consulting teachers.
Okay, so much of my questions have been answered. So when we go back to how we're working to professionalize the Department of OHRD, and you talked about wanting, with someone that has that expertise. Have we, or are we going to also collect the data, have a plan to where we can collect the data, so that way we can know that taking this different approach is actually really working in the recruitment? Okay, all right, okay, I didn't hear you say that, but I'm certain you were thinking of it. I just wanted it to be stated out loud.
Yes, we want to be able to identify regions where the recruiters go, contacts that they've made, any MOAs, they need to be out there saying, let us have your student teachers. And this is the kind of support that we provide in our district, so that universities see the value in our program, and that the value added that having a consulting teacher in the building, having support in the building, and then having support in the community, really creating a space for teachers to be excited about Montgomery County and the opportunity.
Okay, great. So we always talk about wanting to make certain that whatever we do, we see a return on our investment. And in the event you need to come back to say we need an additional person, right? And one person is just not enough. We can do more work with that, collecting that data and being able to talk about what that looked like over the course of the year would be very helpful. So thank you for that. And then I'll go to career pathways. We talked about it at the last work session when Ms. Sharon had come up here from Strategic Initiatives Department, and then with you talking about it's not going to go away, but the work's going to be spread across a number of people, and then you went into detail. So tell me what that will look like, because my colleagues have talked about it, about what it looks like when we put more work on top of other people. And then what we hear our community talk about all the time is that central office is so heavily staffed, it's so top heavy. And what we know as the board, and what you all know because you're here doing the work, that when it comes budget time, this is probably the area where we cut the most, right? But we need the people to do the work. We want, and our community wants us to be able to ensure that our math and literacy scores are going up, right? That we have professionals doing the work all across the district. So that looks like, some things that we try to dismantle or take away, that maybe in some efforts this is not worth the case. These are two positions, right? Two or three?
It's 2.
It's 2, and it comes to about $300 and some thousand dollars?
Yes.
Okay, so talk about, when Ms. Sharon was here last week, she talked about that in addition to do the new paraeducators orientation, that we will also be training every month. Is that as new people come in? Talk about with that.
So the training that's provided in strategic initiatives, I can't speak to.
Okay, you can't speak to. Okay, so what's happening in your area that you?
So with ours, the Career Pathways program has provided services to SEIU employees from not specified areas. So if I am SEIU and I'm a paraeducator that is ready to make that transition to a teacher, that SEIU person would receive support, direction, assistance from instructional specialists and the consulting teachers, all of which are in Dr. Stanislaus' department. Additionally, those looking for opportunities in business administration would receive that support out of that office as well.
Do we know
So
that?
I'm sorry. So we're just refining how we're delivering the service, and the individuals who are currently doing the job or have done that work are the people who will then be helping the SEIU individuals transition to the new position or transition to the new opportunity.
I can add a little.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
And just to add to that, so, just to be clear, the program won't go away. It'll be
I understand.
reimagined a bit if it's going to move forward without the staffing. What that could look like would be a lot of collaboration, coordination, communication, first and foremost, to identify what's really working well, and it has a lot of pluses, the program does. So looking at what's working really well in that transition discussion, and then some areas that we can look for regarding how can we continue to bring this great service and beyond, and using that as a little bit of a gap analysis to determine what next steps we can take. So within the Department of Professional Growth Systems, we, and like many other offices, offer a litany of trainings currently for soft skills for our support professional staff. And that's from all 8 chapters that we offer the work. So if we're to reimagine what this could look like, it would continue to identify opportunities for training for the individuals who are ready to move from one space and maybe one chapter to another chapter. Maybe you have a secretary who wants to go into finance. So what do we do in order to create that pathway for that to occur? And that's some of the great work that's going on right now. Another idea would be, if the resources are what they are, utilizing what we currently have in space. So we have a cadre of trainers who are almost, I would say 90%, are support professionals, identifying those who are experts in their area and looking at how can we build out courses to provide more of that one-on-one support. We may not have the person to do that one-on-one support, but we can identify opportunities to provide spaces where people can come in with their resumes, and there will be people there to review those resumes with them, provide opportunities for them to go through kind of mock interviews. So we'll be very, very creative and look at what's working really well. It's a great, like I said, it's a great program, and I think the people who are doing it did a really wonderful job with it. They have ambassadors, which are very helpful, like mentors to support professionals across the district, thinking about how can we, if someone's stepping in to say, I want to be an ambassador, what they're saying is, I'm a leader, right? And they have those skills to do that work. So how can we continue to enhance their leadership? Possibly creating a cohort of training for those ambassadors to go through. And I think that's something that's in the works right now. I'm not sure where it is, but that would be something that we would discuss in a transition meeting and looking at what's working well and what are some areas that we can continue to grow and develop if the program does come to the Department of Professional Growth.
Okay, so great. So I do understand it's not going away. So quick question. So when you talked about there would be collaboration, is this as a result of the new way that it will be done because it will be spread across a number of people? So it's trying to bring those people on board to kind of understand what was happening before and what direction you wanted to move in, because the people who have the familiarity with all that won't be the people that will be working in that position anymore, correct?
Yeah, and years ago, the paraeducator work was a part of the Department of Professional Growth Systems, and then it migrated.
So tell me why it migrated. Why did it migrate?
that was a long time ago. It was 5 years
Oh,
ago.
okay.
So there were some shifts, and some of the work that the individual who was in charge of paraeducator development really worked in alignment with curriculum. And I think that was the reason, the training that teachers would get, the paraeducators would get. So it felt like it was a good natural migration and alignment. So even, the discussion with the two offices coming together to do that work, continuing the work with the paraeducators where they are, and that training, and thinking about the work of career pathway. We already meet in multiple spaces currently that are already set up as platforms for discussion. So I think, collaboratively that could work, but it is going to take us really operationalizing what next steps we can do together in order for us to continue the good service that the individuals are getting who interface with the career pathway currently.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm certain I was a part of when on the board when we made the separation. We thought that was a good move to be intentional to do it that way. But these are really tough times, right? And so we're asking all the questions and kind of coming back around and repeating because we know that these are good programs that really service our employees really well. And it's just hard, even in the tough economic times, to do away from things that we know have been helpful to the system. So that's why, I can speak for myself, but I heard my colleagues say that, ask the same questions. It's not to badger you all and to put you in the hot seat, but I do appreciate that you all have all the knowledge about what's going on, and you can be able to spit out the numbers and give us what we need in order to make informed decisions. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could just follow up. So I appreciate that question and actually all of the questions and discussion that was brought to the table. I think the discussions around this chapter, but frankly all of the other chapters that we've been talking about really show the challenges that we face when we need to make reductions. Last year when we were sitting at the county council, there was maybe a misunderstanding that, if they need to cut 10 or 20 million, that's not a problem. They've got a $3.2 billion budget that they'll just go and figure it out. But as we've seen through these discussions over the past 3 work sessions, every single dollar is strategically allocated in this budget. 90% of it, almost 90% of it goes to people. The remaining things are buses, utilities, other things like that can't be reduced. And so when we go to make reductions, and if we're forced to make further reductions this spring, it means hitting services, it means cutting people, none of which we want to do. I mean, none of these cuts were proposed because, we thought that was going to be more fun or more enjoyable or providing better services. It was just out of an economic reality, as Ms. Evans kind of alluded to. But we have now, over the past 2 years, since I've been here, this is the second budget I've worked on with the system, cut about 11% now from our central services. And so that is significant. It was already a very tight budget, kind of a skeleton staff to begin with. When you start making those levels of reductions, it's going to be painful. And so just wanting to thank the board for their attention to the detail that's included in all of these chapters and kind of bringing us back to the fact that even in these tough economic times, the decisions are really difficult ones, making decisions about the least bad choices sometimes, and not what we want to be doing, but certainly what we've been tasked to do. So.
Yeah, and I just want to,
Just to say, in the interest of time, we really do need to move along, but I did have a couple of questions. I just want to make sure, one of the challenges for me as a board member is the process, right? The board has made some priorities in previous years, what makes it in the end, what doesn't make it in the end. The board has been very supportive of our HR system because we know how important, as has been shared by my colleagues, right? We want to have a teacher in every classroom. We want them to be highly qualified. We want them to stay. We want them to be processed through the system quickly. All of those things require resources, some software and some human. And so what I'm trying to understand is, what has remained in the Office of Human Resources through all of the necessary budget maneuvers that we have to do in order to balance the budget. So just want to make sure I'm clear. The consulting teacher accelerators, no consulting teachers were added last year? No. And then same with the, what's it called? The
Certification.
Yes, also was not added after the final budget was approved. Okay. And then what were the directives in terms of the reductions to the offices? Was it across the board, find 5% or 10% or?
The direction was to find 5%, and then to identify what the changes in service level would be.
Okay.
It actually started with a 3% reduction and then moved to a 5% reduction, so a total of 8 over the course of this year.
Okay.
One more piece I wanted to add into that. We did go back and I directed the team, yes, look at 5% and 3%, but at some point we have to look at where can we not afford to make a cut. I don't think it's appropriate to look at a system in a one-size-fits-all manner because where there may be one department that can take a 5 or 3% cut, there's another department that just can't, given what the system's priorities are. So I directed Mr. Hall to go back and work with the team to actually do that, because there were some areas that we'd gotten from you and some areas that we received from you and some areas from the board that we thought needed to be priority, like special education. You know, we can't take an 8% cut in the area of special education. Actually, a lot of what we talked about today, it's hard to take a cut in any of these places. But when we think about areas of compliance, you know, those areas that in which we are required to do specific things, that's when we have to take that into consideration. Before we leave this chapter, I did want to circle back to one other piece that was mentioned, and I think it's always important for us to think about this. The biggest capital that we have that operates as human capital in Montgomery County Public Schools are the teachers that are providing services to our students within the district, hands down. We had a lot of conversation about diversity and what that looks like and how it's represented. So right now we know that in Montgomery County Public Schools, 34% of our student population represents Latina students. About 21% represent African American students. So just those two alone represent over, you know, half of the student body within our system. And as we were talking about the importance of who our staff are that are recruiting, Dr. Stanislaus mentioned, you know, the ambassador program. That's actually a great way for us to take advantage of all of the diversity that exists within our system, because it doesn't matter who you are, you don't have to work in human resources. You can actually go out and recruit on behalf of Montgomery County Public Schools. And that, when we look at programs like that, that's exactly how we have to continue to say, who are our people seeing, how do we see them, and how do the students, I guess, and adults that we're trying to get to Montgomery County reflect that. So we have been very intentional, and we come back to talk about this at the board table for the Human Resources and Development Report. One of the directives that I want to say, you know, we've been working on this for a couple of years, is really looking at that recruitment to exactly what Ms. Key said, where are we going and who's there? Because we've been working with HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, for a while, and so many of them represent long-standing relationships. But we also have been really working with HSIs, which are Hispanic serving institutions. And so those are institutions that represent over 25% student body who are full-time students who actually have students who are enrolled in those programs, and those institutions, called again HSIs, get a special federal funding that's available to them, so that you know, those fundings are available just to be able to provide that level of flexibility. So when we come back to really talk about the Human Resources and Development Report at the table, I think we should get into the details of those institutions, specifically how we are tracking the data in terms of who's coming out from recruitment, because that's the thing. We can have all the people in the world, but if we don't have the data structure set up to collect what is happening as a result of those types of engagements, then I'm not exactly sure that, you know, we can tell the full story. And we must be able to tell the full story to know what resources are appropriate. So I just wanted to elevate that, because that's a really big part of the discussion that we had today. Thank you.
Really quick.
Very quick follow-up, and maybe this is something that Ms. Keys and team can come back to us, because I'm still learning a lot about how to look at this budget, how to look at this book, how to put it together, and I'm sorry if it's repetitive. I'm trying to understand, when you looked at the whole HR, I really appreciate the fact that you're looking at areas that we need to grow. Recruitment is one of them, because compared to other jurisdictions, they're way ahead of us in numbers of recruiters. And also with the whole investigative team and so on. So I really want you to know I appreciate that. So the 3 positions you're adding right now, there's 4 TPTs in there temporarily. Those then will become 3. 3 out of those 4 technically will be then full-time?
There's the potential for that. We're waiting on the completion of the community of practice, so that then when we are staffing the department, we're staffing it again to align with industry standards.
And the other quick question I had is, I'm trying to understand the special assignment folks. Did you look at those folks and reevaluate and evaluate them for cost effectiveness? Since we're looking at the whole, since we're looking at everything where we can't look at cost effectiveness, and because I'm trying to understand what is it that they do and whether they get evaluated just like everybody else for cost effectiveness and whether we did that or not.
Did you say individuals on special?
Well, they're like special assignments. I thought and I'm going to tell you about my ignorance right now, so everybody can be. So I thought that the consulting teachers were part of this group in a sense, because to me, that's a special assignment. The consulting teachers. Okay, and thank you for memory. Yeah, she said no. So I'm trying to understand if we looked at every component and human resources, including. I don't know who these folks are, to see for cost effectiveness and evaluating them and all that good stuff.
Yes.
As brief as you can.
Yes, we do have the consulting teachers are the consulting principals. All of those individuals who provide direct service are receiving evaluation and are all currently carrying caseloads much larger than they should.
But I guess my question was, do we have other folks on special assignments that are not part of that group?
Could you give her an example of someone on a position on special assignment? Yes.
A position on special assignment is typically an individual who is waiting for the board's decision, so they're just not in their regular job, they're specially assigned, and HR is usually where the special assignment ends up.
Okay.
And it's temporary.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Those are some complex questions that I appreciate your responses to. So if we could move on with the next chapter, thank you.
Like Dr. Stanislaus, I'm from New York as well, so I'll put on my New York voice to catch us up here. I did appreciate her comment about making $1 out of 15 cents, too.
We do that every year, yeah.
And I would like to introduce Yvonne Alfonso-Winter, our Director of Management and Budget, before I get started. So we're looking for the slide for Chapter 10. Thank you. So Chapter 10, Finance, has a few unique features that the other chapters don't. The first one is that what doesn't appear on this pie chart is because it would skew the other items, is our employee benefits and self-insurance. It's a big number. It's $700 million. If we put that in there, it would totally skew the pie chart. So that resides in Chapter 10, but we're not reflecting that here. We'll talk about that later on. In addition, this chapter is also where we budget for future supported projects. So for the viewing audience, I wanted to define that. So our provision for future supported projects, it's a lump sum appropriation that allows the Board of Education, under certain conditions, to approve the receipt and expenditure of unanticipated grant funds throughout the year, rather than requesting supplemental appropriations from the county council. So as you can see, if you see the line items defined as future supported projects, it represents about $1 million. And it's allocated across 4 out of those 5 objects. When we use this, and we use this provision throughout the year, you'll see this on numerous board consent agenda items throughout. So then when you take away system benefits and the future supported projects, what remains is about $9 million and 90 employees spread over 1 department and 6 divisions. As many of the other chapters noted, that represents then more than 90% of our chapter budget when you take away those 2 other items. So what are the responsibilities of those 90 employees? I'll give a brief description of what the divisions and department and finance do, and I like to describe it as how we follow the money during the course of the year. So the year starts with the Division of Management and Budget facilitating the development of the operating budget from superintendents to propose and through the board approved. Thank you, Ms. Alfonso-Windsor. Then the Division of School Finance Support works to equitably allocate those resources to schools to assist in meeting students' needs throughout the system. After the funds are in place, the Division of Procurement assists offices to procure supplies and services to maximize the value of every dollar for our students, while the Finance Office takes time to train the financial agents in the schools and offices to make sure that everybody knows what our rules and best practices are. After the goods and services are purchased, the Division of Controller works to make sure that our vendors are paid timely and accurately, while the Department of Employee and Retiree Services ensure that our employees and retirees get their checks and benefits every other week. Our Division of Investments keeps our pension fund healthy to pay our retirees and also oversees our 403B and 457 defined contribution plans. We monitor spending and cash flow every day, and we keep our board and the county council abreast of our financial status through issuing monthly financial reports. And then at the end of the year, our Division of Financial Reporting puts it all together in our award-winning annual comprehensive financial report. Next slide. So as our budget has grown from $2 billion to $3 billion and now $3.3 billion, the number of staff within the office has remained relatively constant. In fact, some areas have actually decreased in size. FY25 is no exception, as the office is decreasing, as you see, by 5.25 positions at a cost of approximately $475,000. I don't like the phrase that we're doing more with less, because losing staff will have an effect on services performed. For instance, in the controller's office, it may take a day or two more than usual to pay our vendors. In financial reporting, some of our monthly bank reconciliations that we do will take a few more days. And in ERSKI, that's our Employee and Retiree Service Center. It might mean some more of our calls at the help desk might take a few more seconds in the queue before they're answered. But even in the face of stagnant or reduced staffing with no accelerators, the Office of Finance continues to move forward with many new initiatives and projects. And this is largely accomplished through innovation, collaboration with the other departments, technology, and having a bright and dedicated staff. So in the divisions of budget and school financial support, we're working with the offices throughout the system to complete the first program budget in 8 years. And we are also rolling out a new student-based budgeting pilot. We have been recognized as having a transparent and differentiated allocation method over the past decade. But the theory here is that by giving principals more autonomy to craft a school-based budget based on their school improvement plans with stakeholder input, our budgets can even be more transparent, more differentiated, and more equitable. We also continue to work with the Office of Strategic Initiatives to help them introduce a new budget dashboard by the end of this fiscal year. Another efficiency that we're working on that assists our teachers, parents, and students is the continued rollout of our new method of electronic payments for student activities. At this point, 90% of schools are using this tool that now has a teacher portal, which reduces the time a teacher has to spend collecting field trip money from students. The divisions of Controller and Financial Reporting are working with MSDE to streamline and automate the mandated blueprint monthly reporting, and we continue to work on our ESSA, Every School Succeeds Act, individual school funding report that's annually posted on the Maryland Report Card website. These teams are also working with the Division of Procurement to create a punch-out for Amazon purchases to assist departments throughout the system with small item purchases. This is a feature that the first phase of our ERP cloud conversion has enabled. Sorry, I'm just getting a drink. The Division of Procurement is also collaborating with our Office of General Counsel to have training sessions for our users throughout the system to explain the various components of our RFP, or request for proposal process. Regarding one of the changes to procurement, we're going to be moving from a $25,000 threshold to a $50,000 threshold for RFPs in the near future. At first glance, this might seem like a move away from due diligence and transparency, but actually it's not. One of the first tenets of a good internal control system is that the benefit of the control needs to outweigh the cost. In other words, in this case, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So for our new RFPs that we currently do between $25,000 and $50,000, there's only a few of them. We can better use our time to monitor and enforce other components of the purchasing process, such as P-card monitoring. The state has recently changed their RFP threshold to $100,000, and many of the other LEAs in the state are planning on following suit. We are one of the few that still use a $25,000 threshold, which we've been using since 1987 or prior, just to give you an idea there. We're often teased about the fact that we still use paper timesheets, but our $25,000 RFP threshold is another area where my peers in the state are questioning me. So speaking about paper timesheets, our Erskine department has been an integral part of the Human Capital Management, or HCM, upgrade, along with the Offices of Strategic Initiatives and OHRD. After we go live in December of 2024, we'll not only be getting rid of paper timesheets, but we'll eventually realize efficiencies in our time and attendance processes, our absentee management, and our benefit processes. Speaking about benefit processes, our Division of Investments is currently working with Erskine and our new pension benefits plan administrator on a plan to save up to $1 million in the pension payment process. Next slide. So getting back to benefits, this slide shows the increase we're making in the superintendent's budget for the cost of the net changes in salaries and wages reflected throughout the chapters. The first three items up top are part of our payroll deductions. The last item is the inflationary increase from the county for our participation in the county self-insurance program. We have long been participants in their public entity pool for our workers' compensation and general liability insurance coverages. Last but not least, the middle bullet represents an influx of $20 million for our employee health benefit plan. The need for additional funds in this area has been the topic of conversation and has been addressed in our monthly financial reports to the board and to the county for over a year, and at this point, we're at a critical juncture. Based on our analysis and our healthcare consultant recommendations, we're confident that we are going to need large annual increases such as this for the next several years. I mentioned a bunch of projects that finance is working on in collaboration with other stakeholders, but the goal of making this EBP fund sustainable over time is probably the most important thing that we need to do. That concludes my presentation. I'll open it up for questions.
Mr. Riley, could you restate why you don't put the benefits in this section? You said it would overwhelm it?
Yeah, I don't know the genesis of it. I know it's easier, like fixed charges, to stay in one place.
So when you look at Chapter 10, for example, the services that are provided in Chapter 10 are worth about, well, the cost of the personnel and so on is about, like Mr. Riley mentioned, about $9 million. When you put a budget in Chapter 10 of almost $1 billion, it doesn't really reflect the work of the departments. Because $700 million of that goes to pay everyone's benefits, everybody wants health insurance. So we just separate that so that you get a clear picture of the actual work of the department, the functions of that department.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And I'll just say, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're required to budget all of the benefits in this chapter by state, by COMAR. And so that's why it's done that way. But it does kind of underestimate then all of the other chapters because, the benefits plan, of which we have a very good one, could be distributed throughout the other chapters. And so as the team works on the program budget, that's one of the things that they're going to look at is how can we more accurately reflect the total cost of personnel, including benefits, within each of the programs that they're administering.
I just don't want to lose sight of how big of a percentage it is in our total budget. And it is important, but it is a big part of our budget as well.
And I believe it came up at the Fiscal Management Committee yesterday. It's about $47 million that was utilities. I'm sorry.
Also
I apologize.
Yeah, benefits are $700 million.
700. Mr. Said.
Of course, in the interest of time, I'll be brief. I just have a quick question. I know you mentioned School Cash Online, which is a new system you guys are using. So I'm first curious about what the fiscal impact of that, what the cost of it is, also what the purpose of it really is, because I know that being involved in my school, when that system kind of came in, a lot of schools felt as though they were left in the dark about the reason. It complicated a lot of systems. And so I think I have a general understanding of the long-term goal, but can you explain that purpose and then what the cost associated with that program is?
The cost for MCPS is minimal. The reason that it came about, and it's been around for many years, we had a different vendor prior. This enables parents and students to make payments, whether on their phone or whether on the computer. is to reduce the amount of cash in schools. You know, just handling cash from an elementary admin perspective, you know, we know they're overburdened, as well as a teacher perspective. If we can kind of reduce that amount, it actually provides more time for a teacher to do their job and teach, not to collect funds from students. So that's one of the premises for doing it. Did that answer your question? I'm trying to think of a...
I think it generally does. I know that I remember when that program was implemented, there was an additional fee that came with having to use school cash online for people that were actually paying. People weren't sure what the additional fee was for, so I'm curious about what that additional fee.
The cost structure, so I can explain that. So if you go to Walmart, for instance, you're not paying an additional charge when you use your credit card. We're using the same methodology here. So when people pay cash, they're actually paying you know, an additional amount for that credit card using that same philosophy. The funds that schools are collecting in cash does go to a separate account within the IAF, or Independent Activity Funds, and that's used to provide waivers and used for other things on the fee that they're collecting on cash. The idea is that the more people we can get by paying with credit cards, you know, we realize these efficiencies throughout the system.
Okay, great. And if you could just follow up, I know you said the impact was minimal, but if you could follow up with what that looks like, that would be great.
Yeah, I can tell you what MCPS's annual cost is for that.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much.
Mrs. Evans?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Riley, for your presentation. And as we all know, your area, your office, you do a lot of work, right? A lot of necessary work and a lot of work that's needed. So let me ask you this question, because like thinking about all that, looking at your efficiencies and reductions and thinking about what we need to do for the blueprint, like that makes me a little bit paranoid that we would not have the sufficient staff to be able to do those monthly reports for the employee and retiree service. So you're doing, like, we're taking out 2 positions. Do we track how many calls that come in from the retirees to make it make sense in terms of the number of people that you may or may not need? Because I would think that particularly after COVID, and I hope there's a time when we don't have to mention COVID, but I think particularly after COVID, with everyone having various health issues or accessing their health care in a way that they probably had before, it's different. And then with us changing providers, that increased the number of calls, because I know the board was getting emails like left and right. So do we keep track of that, or do you have that information?
Yeah, let me answer. I'm going to ask
I said quite a few things.
Gina Rapoli to come
yeah.
down to talk about our, you know, how we address calls. But just while she's coming down, to answer your blueprint question. So I had mentioned before that our controller's office is working with the state. So the benefit of this is it's not really labor intensive. The idea is that we'll be able to upload a file to the state system.
Okay.
So it's a savings of personnel and stuff. It's going to be built within the system. And, you know, we're hoping to realize more of those efficiencies as we fully implement our ERP system and finish the HCM process, that some of these efficiencies will evolve over time.
Okay, so there's efficiencies in trying to upload it, but in terms of creating the report and putting it together, that creates people, right?
Yeah, and then those people are working,
right.
as was mentioned before.
Okay.
Some of the areas where we do have reductions, we are asking more of our staff to do. Okay. And as Mr. Hall mentioned, at this point, we're kind of at bare bones right now in finance.
Absolutely. I just think it's great for the record for people to hear what it will look like for the system to do the work that all of our community, like what we require you to do and what people often demand us to do.
And as you mentioned, Ms. Evans, a lot of our work is compliance related, whether it's paying our vendors, you know, correctly, paying our staff,
Sure.
Making all our reports to the state. So we do have a lot of compliance work that we have to do with the limited staff we have.
Okay, all right.
Buenos dias, good morning. I'm Gina Rapoli. I'm the director of the Employee and Retiree Service Center. We do have a call center that is of 7 call center agents and 1 supervisor. It's a small but mighty call center. We do get about a month over 4,000 phone calls, employees and retirees. We do have a waiting time that we have been working really hard to reduce, but with 7 staff members, it's very challenging to serve over 23,000 employees plus our 10,000 plus retirees.
Right.
Our retirees are always calling because they need assistance with technology, so the phone calls take a little longer. But we have upgraded our phone system, which has a callback mechanism. So we encourage people to either call us, leave a message, their phone number, so we can call them back. We also do have what is called ServiceNow, which is a online application where employees can send emails and we can respond back through emails. But I know that they do need like that face-to-face, on the phone kind of service.
Absolutely. If we're making a phone call, we all want immediate attention and help and support.
Yeah.
So I know what that feels like. So you said there's 7 agents, 1 supervisor, the 2 specialists that we're reducing in that area. That doesn't impact the call center though, right?
No.
Right. I just wanted to know how many calls came in to address. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So the call center also has a front desk, so we have a dedicated person to help walk-ins. So we end up having 6 call center agents at all times. However, during lunchtime is our busiest time because we have to kind of start lunch at 11 through 2. We're kind of trying to cover the 2 hours of lunch.
Yes, and I'm sure during inclement weather, like nobody's coming, you're getting more calls.
So yesterday-
At a certain time of the year, you get more. Is there a time of the year when we get more calls than?
Yesterday was the perfect example. There was no school for
Right.
teachers. Yesterday was a really busy day because everybody's home, everybody's calling. So we encourage retirees to call on the days that are not. I mean, we're trying to balance here, but again, when there's an emergency, we have to.
So let me ask this question. 'Cause I know people hate to hear the word temporary part-time. So in the event that you all would need additional help, is temporary part-time an option for you all during those really heavy seasons? I know like probably during, why can't I think, November, what did we do during, like, what am I? Yes, right, open enrollment, I couldn't think of the word. During open enrollment, I'm sure it's really hectic and crazy and busy. Are there things that are being done in your area to be able to support or provide more?
Yeah, we currently have 3 temporary part-time employees that have been helping us. But again, it is a long-term effort to train those staff because when they are coming at the front desk or they're answering calls, they're asking specific questions that require some functional expertise. So you can't just come in today and be able to answer those questions.
Okay.
So we have been trained. We have 3 temporary part-times that have helped us on and off, and we like to keep them on the roster when those events happen. If somebody goes on maternity leave like we have right now, we have one of those people helping us at the front desk or on the phones.
Very good. You know what, thank you. I was just say this to everybody from last week, all the people, all the department heads that came to talk. I hope that we are finding ways to incorporate wellness, right? Because this is a lot. This is a lot for us to ask. It's a lot to even talk about. Like, I think my pressure is going up just listening to you talk about like what it looks like for you in just this one area. And so I thought I heard when we're talking about transportation, I remember we went to the Home Depots one time that one depot, they were bragging, which I love, that they had a bus where they were able to do like aerobics or just something. There was something wellness related. Did I hear that bus was going away? Because it's like that bus needs to drive around to various schools and departments and parking in Carver parking lot. I just want to make sure, I just want to say to all of our people here in central office, please, please, please find a way to balance like work and life. And although we require and we ask a lot, I hope that you still find ways to take time for yourself. But thank you for coming up and sharing that. I wanted to get that information.
Hey, can I just clarify? So I did make mention that it might be a couple more seconds in the queue. So as Ms. Berpoli referred to, any reduction in her staff, they cover for each other. So would have a potential effect in the call time response.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And just to keep in mind that employees do not call us to thank us for their paychecks. We would love to hear those phone calls, but.
Yes. Well, I'm going to thank you on their behalf. I'm sure that they mean to do that, right? Thank you.
Can I take a point of privilege? I would like to say, as a retiree, that I have used the callback system, and it's probably one of the best out there. Because remember, we all use callback centers with, businesses and corporations, and they call us back. but your team has been very responsive, very friendly, very personable, and I always get an answer to my question. So I want to personally thank you for that because they do an outstanding job.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for doing that. Yeah, thank you.
I had a question about slide 11, the $20 million for the employee health benefit. We've talked about this, but I just wanted the public to better understand. That's a big dollar amount. Just want to understand why that's necessary this year.
So that $20 million, to take you back a few years, and we discussed it in fiscal management, but what we were looking at was our fund balance from 2019 was at $65 million. At that time, the rule of thumb was that we should have a $25 million fund balance there, based on us and the county's agreement. So we intentionally kind of reduced that amount. What's happened is now, the fund balance has been reduced to a point where last year in the annual financial report, we were reporting a negative balance. So to correct that, we have to make an influx of additional monies outside our normal increases for inflation and for rate changes. So as was mentioned, we do our open enrollment once a year, and we'll find out from a healthcare consultant what is that increase that we're going to pass on to our employees and to MCPS. That number hasn't been sufficient to kind of correct that. And we're saying a few years because it takes a few years to get back to that point. I'm not saying that we're shooting for a target of $65 million, but we do want to get to a point where we can rebuild our fund balance to, let's say, $25 or $30 million or more, based on the cost of healthcare now. I think we have to relook at that, what the appropriate amount should be. But what's driving this expenditure restriction right now is to help fund that in this current year. We're projecting that by the end of this year, we could be in a situation where we're not able to pay those healthcare costs. So,
yeah. So in that you stated that we are budgeting for it in our upcoming budget, but we're also doing a spending freeze currently, so that we
for current cash flow, correct?
Okay. So a two-prong approach to a big issue that we're trying to address.
Yeah, and actually, it's a multi-pronged because, as you're aware, we did a RFP where we switched our vendors. That best practices from a financial point of view, so we're going to continue to do that. We did reap savings from that, but we also have to look at our plan itself and plan management. Are there things within the plan that we can adjust to make it more sustainable? And that's conversations we'll have with our associations.
And is the county government also seeing these huge increases?
Yeah, all governments throughout. I know a lot of the other LEAs are facing the same things. And, I've talked to them, and some of them are like, we're negative last year in the financial report, too. And when I say negative, so from an accounting perspective, we were negative, but, we're still obviously now able to pay our bills, but it's going to get to a point where it's going to be so much strain on our operating budget that that's why it's so critical.
Thank you.
And just to add in, Mr. Riley, that this is going to take a multi-year process to correct. I just wanted to share that, Mr. Hall. I know when you and team brought this to me as a concern, we said this would be a place that we could start with this $20 million this year, but given the fact that last year we lost our fund balance, I just want to, be very clear about that. This is going to be a multi-year correction process with benefits.
Thank you for that. I wanted the public to understand the spending freeze and why that's necessary at this time. Okay, quick questions so we can move on to our final chapter. Ms. Harris.
Yes, and I did just want to thank the very talented budget and finance team, and I love the award-winning annual financial report. I read it cover to cover. But I did just want to emphasize, so when you were just talking about the fund balance, you weren't talking about the fund balance that we've been going back and forth with the council about. You're talking about the Employee Health Benefit Trust Fund balance, which we went into a deep dive about yesterday at fiscal management, because it is a very realistic concern that thing could hit zero. And so the $700 million in the budget for employee benefits, and then adding in this additional $20 million is to try to make sure we don't get back there next year. We don't want to be in this place where we really are afraid that we're going to hit the bottom line, because we want to be able to continue to pay these healthcare costs. So as Ms. Silvestri just emphasized, the spending freeze is so that we can continue to pay our health benefit costs, which is very important to all of our employees. And we are experiencing just dramatic increases in inflationary pressures. here in this, the health benefits particularly, but also we have $15 million in this budget for other inflationary costs. So that's a lot of money going to inflation. So hoping that we can autocorrect. But I did want to go a little, just specifically, we talked about on slide 9, for each one of those 4 categories, there are future supported projects. And just for the bigger, wider audience, how can we predict in advance or budget for something we're calling future supported projects?
And we look at trends, so we know that every year we've been getting about $10.5 million in grants that are outside of our budget. So grants that, you know, the departments determine that are great opportunities that they want to apply for. And some are constant, you know, from year to year. So every year we get about 10.5. Any new grants that are more than 200,000, brand new, we do have to take it as a supplemental to the board and then to the county council. But in general, recurring grants or smaller grants, we spend about $10.5 million a year. And I think it was last year when we increased that from 9.5 million to 10.5 million because we kept seeing the increase.
And just for, again, the general public, because it seems a little counterintuitive that we would apply for a grant that supports our work and our mission and our strategic goals, and we would have to ask the county council's permission to spend it. So why is that?
And that is because the county council is the authority in appropriating our budget. So they have to appropriate every single penny that we spend.
Even though it's not coming from them?
Correct, even though it's not coming from them.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further lights, so if we can move on to the final chapter.
If we could put the PowerPoint back up, please. All right, so I'm going to talk us through Chapter 11 here, which is administration and oversight. Makes up about $24 million, and I'll just point off right out the top that, you know, these chapters are state reporting categories, and so you can compare kind of one school district to another, and we are always one of the lowest, especially for the large LEAs within Maryland, for our administrative and oversight costs. So I just wanted to point that out off the beginning. So this chapter includes a number of different administrative functions. It includes the Board of Education, including our internal audit division, the Office of the Superintendent, the Office of the Deputy Superintendent, which includes the School System Medical Officer, and the Division of Blueprint, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. This chapter also includes the Chief of Staff's office, including communication, partnerships, instructional television. It includes the General Counsel's office. It also includes the Chief Operating Officer's office, which includes system-wide safety and security. What you're not going to see in these slides are investments in some additional security measures, and we are doing that through a settlement that we had that we brought to the board this fall with Jewel, where we will be receiving additional funds from them and using those for vape prevention and other security measures around the bathrooms and other places where the vaping has become a significant issue in some of our schools. So making sure that we're addressing that, even if you don't see those in the slides today. So as you can see in the pie chart there, just like most of the other chapters, the vast majority is devoted to salaries and wages. Aside from, there is a little bit in here that is some of the salaries and wages funded through the MCPS-TV revenue, which Ms. Fisher will talk through here briefly. This also includes, under the contractual services, includes legal services, communication services, including the contract we have for website management. It includes our language line, which allows families to access translation services. It includes money for our external auditors, facility rentals, contractual maintenance. So it's a lot of the overhead and the administrative work of the school system. When we look at the supplies and the materials, this is made up partly of office supplies, but then also a lot of supplies and materials needed to promote community engagement, including the back to school fair, and then again also some of those materials and supplies for MCPS TV. And then finally, the equipment costs here are mainly devoted to leasing and purchasing of equipment and replacement and installation of cameras in schools. So that's kind of the broad overview, and I'll ask Ms. Fisher to join us at the table and walk through the next slide.
Good. Oh, it's still morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I have come to talk to you about the Instructional Television Special Revenue Fund and what sort of the short-term implications are and also some of the long-term implications. As you all know, we have talked about the changes in communications, I'm going to say since COVID, but also just ongoing in the country and specifically in Montgomery County. Changes in communications, how we communicate, what we need to communicate, the types of platforms that we use to communicate is changing, not incrementally, but exponentially, and this is going to continue for the short term. So how it affects the Instructional Television Special Revenue Fund is regarding cable TV subscriptions and the number of people who are switching over to streaming services. That fund is entirely funded by the 5% of the Montgomery County cable subscribers, and as that continues to reduce, our fund will continue to reduce. In this year, it's approximately $108,000, but that will continue and accelerate over the next 3 to 5 years. Yvonne has been working with us to determine how we will continue to provide services, but there's no question that things are going to change in the communications area. We will need to figure out what are essential services, what is the speed of delivery for those services, and how many people it takes to provide those services over time. So again, this year, 100,000, does it say 100,000? 860, I'm sorry, not 108,000. In addition, the County Office of Legislative Oversight has done a study on this, confirming how this fund will be reduced over time. And we are in the process of instituting the plan that will move people, essential people, from the special revenue fund into the general operating budget. This year, it was 1/2 of a position, essentially, through some bookkeeping measures and one position that was eliminated entirely. So we are beginning to see those reductions implemented for FY25. Okay, so any questions?
I have one. I have one. So this fund, it impacts people such as like Lucas and, right, Dan?
Yes, about, we have 12 positions in television. Approximately half of them are funded by this special revenue fund, and the other half are funded on the operating budget.
Okay. You know what, so, and.
Yes, it's engineers and other.
Right. So recently we had Dick Lipsky retire, as well as Carlton, and Carlton's last name is escaping me. But what really stood out to me is how everybody talked about how detailed and organized Carlton was. And when they showed a glimpse of the spreadsheets and everything that goes into the work, Carlton educated me, because I had no idea that, all that happened. Like, there's a lot of magic that's going on, but you don't really know the detail and just see it. And when I think about, so I think this, so we need them to do everything to highlight the good news and what's going on. And since COVID, we're Zooming, like Mrs. Mondrosky is online, like that has to happen with somebody. A lot goes on when we decide that we're going to Zoom, and then we're going out into classrooms and videotaping all the good things that are happening and bringing that back. So our people do a lot. They do a lot of stuff, and reductions hurt. So that is going to be less people to do all the same work, which is more since
Right.
pandemic.
So some of this, we've started to discuss in the communications department and frankly with HR about how we can begin to sort of restructure ourselves. Now, I know that it seems strange, but some of that can be done with one of these as opposed to an entire television department. There are feature films being made on iPhones these days. And so some of that work will be done differently, right? But it still takes humans, and it still takes professional development dollars to get to that point. So it's a longer-term restructuring of how we do our work. I don't know how many personnel changes that will impact, but we'll be doing our work differently. 5 years from now, it might be unrecognizable to people who were here 5 years ago.
So are there things that we're going to cut back and scale back on that we are doing currently to?
We have tried to do to implement some efficiencies. Obviously, we have approximately 400 clients, right? 200 schools, all of the departments, everyone here, a lot of people out in the community. And so now we have instituted an intake process so that we can prioritize. We have, once a week meetings where we know what's coming in, what we need to decide to do, what we shouldn't do, or what the speed of it is. And those meetings have been very helpful to containing the flow of our work. But at some point, things will have to change, fairly dramatically.
If I'm recalling correctly, we do this, I've been to this event, it's held at USG, and I think it's like the Business Fame Awards, it's something, right? And we usually have it usually happens on the same day that we have a meeting or something, and when you go to that, our people are there doing all of that.
Right.
That's not an MCPS event.
Right, but that is our contribution from MCPS to
Sure, I understand that. So is that what we're going to be looking at as well? Like what all are we going to be able to contribute to
Correct.
people outside of the system
Correct.
to see? Okay. Just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, all the partnerships, but, we want to continue them. The question
I know
is
we do.
how many, and at what speed,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Durso, our acting chief of staff, to come up and talk through the next slide. If we could pull up slide number 15, please.
Still morning. Good morning, President Silvestri, Vice President Harris, and board members. I'm Michael Durso, currently acting chief of staff. On a previous publication, I think these slides were numbers 45 and 46. It is now, with your materials, numbers 15 and 16. I want to take a minute to just go through that. Chapter 11 includes a decrease which amounts to the equivalent of 2 positions for a total of $407,000. These reductions primarily in the Office of Chief of Staff and the Office of Communications. In the Office of Chief of Staff, the budget includes a total reduction of about $134,000 based on the elimination of a 1.0 copy editor position and reductions in professional and supporting salaries, contractual services, and program supplies. The Office of Communications includes a total reduction of about $245,000, including a reduction of a 0.5 administrative secretary. There are a few essential positions and services that we're moving from the ESSER into the operating budget. In the Office of System-Wide Safety and Emergency Management, I think Mr. Hull mentioned that earlier, there's $927,000 shifted to the operating budget to continue the rollout of camera purchases and installation in schools. I can tell you as a former principal in this school system how valuable those cameras are, especially in our elementary schools, which have felt the the pressure of not having the security complement that our secondary schools have. Another accelerator of $406,000 is contractual services in support of increased usage of the language line interpretation. And again, I can attest to you the importance of that. As our usage of the language line grows, we have been fortunate that the contractual services have actually decreased. So it's been kind of advantageous for for the school system. As you know, this telephone interpretation service supports MCPS offices and schools in their efforts to connect with families who prefer to communicate in a language other than English, part of our effort to ensure equity and access for all. I just can't stress enough that the importance of those two items, the camera piece and the language line, and that finishes my part of the presentation.
Thank you.
And I believe the next slide is for discussion.
Ask my colleagues to turn on their lights. Mr. Said.
This is more of just a general comment, I guess, for the public. I just want to kind of reflect on those two positions that we've, added with the Board of Education, and just the importance of them. Of course, our senior analyst, Ms. Pattyfoot, is here with us, and she is fantastic. And the work she does allows the Board of Education to really help better, look over our processes, analyze that, and really have a better grip over anything. And now we're in budget season, and that's where we can really use it most to make sure that every single dollar is being responsibly spent and helping with our oversight job. But then with communication, I know that the public has consistently communicated that communication from the board may have been lacking, and that's exactly what we realize. That's why we have gotten this position. And so I just want to reiterate, this is not just more money going to the board. This is exactly, I think, things that the public have really emphasized they wanted from the board, and we're acting on that to ensure that our communication and our ability to be an oversight body is really, really strengthened by both of these positions. So I just wanted to give a short word on that these are, I would call them essential positions. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that for a second for everyone who may be looking at this like, why does the board need more money? These are very important workers that we've hired.
Thank you, Mr. Said.
Let me just add, Mr. Said, great point there. I can remember in my years sitting on the other side of this table, the concern that came up frequently about the communications piece as well as the budget analyst. And I think that not only strengthens the board, but it strengthens the system as a whole.
Thank you. Mr. Vera-Eben?
Yes, I just wanted, when, Mr. Ho, you were talking earlier about the safety and security, and you talk about the money from vaping. I was wondering how much is that?
I don't have the exact number. I don't know if Yvonne does, but it's several $million, a few $1 million this year, and then we will continue to receive installments over the next 3 years. And do you know the amount?
So the amount, right now, the settlement is about $8 million, but that's not what we're going to receive. We found out that there are legal fees associated with it, so we're waiting to find out what that exact amount is.
Not surprising. Okay, and then I just want to reread the school camera project, especially for elementary schools. It's a must. And then with the accelerator for the language line interpreting services, is that an extension? Do we already have something like that? So this is an addition to make it more accessible? I'm just trying to get an idea.
So right now, it's our current system, but the usage since COVID has increased tenfold. So it's just to be able to cover, the usage that we're experiencing. The rates actually have gone down, but the uses have increased substantially. So it's the funding to be able to continue that service.
So to expand it so we could have more folks being able. And I think this is really important to emphasize that because we are such a diverse community, and I don't think Spanish is really the issue, but some of the other languages that parents really need access to that sometimes we don't have, we don't think about, in a lot of senses. But so this would be available at all the schools or just for central office, or is this in schools they will be able, when they say the language line, because I see sometimes schools use them and sometimes they don't use them when they could. So I'm just wondering.
So right now, all the schools, everybody in MCPS has access to the language line. And what we're seeing is that our current budget is not sufficient to cover our expenses because of that increased use. So that's what we're hoping to correct here, increase the budget to be able to maintain the same level of services that our staff and parents and community are able to access it as needed.
And is that enough? That number that you have out there? I'm just wondering if that's what you were going for, or did you negotiate to the lowest? I just want to make sure that that's what you need.
Well, actually, currently our budget, believe it or not, is only $168,000. So this almost triples our budget based on the usage. So this is based on the office did an analysis of what they will need for FY25 to continue the same level of services and not have a deficit in our budget.
And then it'd be nice then for next year to have an evaluation to see if that is sufficient or not, because I think this is such an incredible line to have with our parents, and having them engage with our system. So thank you.
And I would just add that, we would consider this one of our critical services, that even if we reach the budget threshold, we're not going to cut off services to our families. We would just have to realign funds within the budget. So we will continue to provide the service as much as it is needed.
And and this is maybe for I'm thinking for the future. What are the areas that I saw there was a lot of need since we brought up COVID? Was that many of our nurses are not bilingual. And there is a need sometimes for specific interpretation on medical issues with kids. And then you have the whole issue with HIPAA, which should not just be anybody in the school system, to come and do the interpretation. So that need to have specialized, sometimes interpreters who can do medical interpretation, and that nurses might know that that is available to them, is an area that I have noticed in my visits to different schools where there is kind of that lack of connection in doing those services. And we live in an area where, thankfully, that is an area of expertise, and there are some partners in the community who already do this for their agencies, including HHS and other agencies that are very, very good at doing that kind of, because sometimes missing that information can be crucial to a nurse in those schools, and it makes life a lot easier for some of these parents to know that that information was done properly and interpreted properly to the right people. So.
I just wanted to say that absolutely is so very important that you just mentioned. And I think this may not be a resource question. This is implementation and fidelity of implementation of the resource that we already have. Because I have to tell you, for the years that I've been in schools in Montgomery County, the nurses do use the language line religiously. And we probably, if I were to guess and say if we've seen it go up, I'm sure it went up significantly during COVID-19 for that purpose. And that's been the quite frankly, most simplest way to make sure that the information is critical to get to parents, that there is no barrier. And I mean, they offer all of the languages that are available. So that's something that we absolutely have access to, prioritize, and the language line is exactly how we bring fidelity to that process.
Ms. Yang.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Durso, good to see you back at the board table. Okay. I want to ask about safety and security, since that's covered in this chapter. And during the public hearing, we have two public hearings. We have heard a significant amount of testimony around school safety and security, people advocating for more personnel at the high school level, people advocating for personnel in the elementary school level. Now, I want to ask, in terms of our high schools, how do we determine how many personnel each school can have?
So there's a number of variables that we look at. The size of the school as far as student population, the size of the school as far as square footage, the layout of the school. Some of our older schools would have more blind spots or more areas of concern. We also look at history of serious incidents. And I'm sure there are a number of other factors that we include in there as well. But it really is a holistic look at what the school needs based on all of those different data points.
Okay, so size, footage, layout, incidents, so we kind of have a method to evaluate. So we have budget for our security personnel, and we also getting some settlement money from class actions. Can I have some data, since they're advocacy, can I have data in terms of incidents or a square footage and school size for our high school to have to understand?
Just some of the data that goes into the formulas?
Yeah. Yes. 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 Thank you.
And I will just add, too, I know that, to your point, safety and security is a hot topic on everyone's mind, and it has been for a number of years, maybe never so since COVID, but the system actually did a security study back in 2019, and it's really interesting. All of the things that were listed in there are things that we have accomplished. So it was things like security cameras, increased personnel, which we've done, having security vestibules at all of our schools. And so as you go through the list of recommendations from just 4 years ago, we've really checked off most of them. However, the challenges continue to evolve, and now we're talking about vape detectors and all of these other things. So it's not as if we've been sitting still. We've been doing a lot of really good work in this area, but as the challenges continue to evolve, as they always will, that's, we need to keep looking at our processes and improvements that need to be made.
I appreciate that comment because I think even in the community, we have seen the rise of security issues in the greater community, right? So I will appreciate these data, so help us better assess how to allocate our resources. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up to that, we probably want to, so incidents, we have to be very careful about when we talk about security in schools, because that could present a bias. So we don't particularly look at incidents and whom when we're calculating that. I just wanted to be clear on that. That could be an issue. So what we do, though, Mr. Hull was correct in the part about the square footage, the number of students for the square footage in the building. Those are things that are considered when we come up with an overall formula for that. If you want incidents by school, that would be separate, because that would not be included in a consideration of the personnel for the school per se in the way that was described. So
whatever data that help us decide the personnel of the school, that's what I.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes.
so then we would be looking at that specifically.
Okay.
So it was interesting when we think about the time frame. The last evaluation of that safety and security was done in 2019. 2020, the spring of 2020 was when COVID happened. I will continue to say this. While we may have accomplished everything that was done in 2019, the landscape is completely different. Just as the teacher was describing a couple weeks ago how she had to go back and retrain herself on how to teach students, I mean, the social emotional supports needed for our students, the access to weapons, fentanyl, I could continue. All of these things are things that in many ways didn't even exist in the way that they do today, which is just a short time ago. And so the deep dive of what it is that we need today is critical. And I say we're talking about that in Montgomery County Public Schools, but when I tell you this is the case around the nation and the state, this is what everybody's grappling with and trying to figure out what is needed today. And I think for us in Montgomery County, we have to figure out what does that mean for Montgomery County? That's going to be different from Washington, D.C. I mean, maybe some similarities, but different from Washington, maybe different from Prince George's County and others. That's why knowing what resources we have available in our community, what those issues are that have exacerbated over time, and why becomes really important.
Ms. Harris.
Yes, just a couple quick questions. And this may be more a question for facilities, but when we look at the cameras, very important, the personnel to install, monitor, and maintain, that's been an issue that's been raised by some of our ITSS staff to whom some of that work has devolved, but it just as an add-on to their other work. So again, it might be a question for our facilities team, but how are we looking to make sure we have the staff we need to effectively install, monitor, and operate those cameras? Because if we're not maintaining them or monitoring them. Yeah. And then,
Can I just say, that's normally the security staff that's in the building that have that responsibility of, monitoring the cameras, but that is a very good point, because the last couple of years, we have expanded the use of those cameras, and particularly, now that you say that, at the elementary level, where we really don't have the security staff. So I think that's a really good point to look into. What does that look like for the infrastructure that we're creating in some of those areas that we have not had the personnel to support?
and because that gets to, and I haven't mentioned it before, but I will be looking kind of sometimes we do things in our schools, and to really fully optimize what we're doing takes specialized people. And that just brings me back to what the testimony we've heard repeatedly from the Loiterman community about. We built this beautiful state-of-the-art, only one of its kind in Montgomery County Middle School's performing arts space, but it requires a specialized technician to safely operate and train the staff to successfully and effectively operate all of that equipment. And so they've been coming to us asking for that media services technician piece. And I would very much hope that that is something that we're looking at. But it just gets to the specialized people we need to optimize the work that we're doing. And then to Ms. Rivera Oven's point about our health room staff, and not always being bilingual, and I'm such a fan of our health room staff. But one other perhaps untapped resource to help with that need of communication is our health professions students, because many of them, as I can say very directly from my own personal experience, many of them are bi and multilingual. And when they work with us, they emerge from our programs, they're HIPAA trained and they're licensed, CNA, CMA, or both. And so that is a very real resource that can be brought to bear to help with that. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Ms. Yang. If I'm not mistaken, don't we have an upcoming safety and security briefing? What is that, in February? Is that in February?
The board.
The board does, yeah.
Yes.
And, one of the things that we've asked for is a lot of the data you just asked for again. But I think it's also important to get back to the forums that we asked to be held around the county, because we need boots on the ground information about how people are feeling about the security in their building, and whether or not, the CEOs versus the SR. We need to have all of that discussion, because we still have not resolved the issue about what we need to do. So it's a work in progress. We've taken it up in the strategic planning committee. We'll be taking it up again. In fact, after they come to the board, we'll probably have a very detailed discussion, because it's one of the strategic priorities, under one of the strategic priorities. So thank you.
April 11th is so. Dr. McKnight.
Yes. No, thank you, Ms. Wolf. It was actually June 27th in which you directed us to look south, north, east, and west in terms of the engagement within the system to hear exactly what the community has said about the program. And we initially put it and scheduled it within our agenda planning for April, so that we would have the time to do a deep dive and to actually do that engagement with fidelity, acknowledging that the communities had much unrest around this issue, and we wanted to be able to do that. So I've, spoken with Mr. Hall on, a few occasions about that, and so that is a piece that we're up. We started with the survey. That's been out, but we know that the survey is just a starting point. We really need to do deep engagement that is reflective of many voices. So thank you for that. And April 11th, we'll be here before you know it. So it's coming.
Thank you for that reminder about the upcoming meeting. I think we do want to, Mr. Hall, make sure that, I would like to hear about that study that we did in 2019 and all the things that we have met, maybe at that meeting, to get some information. And like you all have said, it's ever evolving, so that's not good enough. Dr. McKnight.
I forgot one thing. Thank you, President Silvestri. So I know many people don't know him, but his name is Al Aracali in this building. And Al, he's downstairs. And whenever there is a tech issue, I have to tell you, he comes to solve that issue. He actually is the person, we were just talking about the cameras. I mean, he does almost all of the camera maintenance by himself from Central, you know, in terms of getting all of that together for 211 schools. So as we're having this conversation about the maintenance of the cameras, I want to build that picture from, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this earlier, from the Central all the way to the schools. So if we have teams of people working in our secondary schools, middle and high schools on maintenance of cameras, and then we have one person at the Central that has to manage all of that, that is huge. And I have to tell you, he's been doing it for a long time. But I do think it's a really important point to just recognize that with the additional cameras, what does that even mean? Not just at the school level, but the Central level also. I meant to mention that when we were mentioning cameras, but I thought it was worth circling back. And if you see Al in and around the hallways, he is the best. Please tell him thank you, because and then just one more note. When I worked at the Department of Education a few years ago, and it was a wonderful experience, I was there and was preparing a presentation for the Secretary of Education, and it was a video. And just think about that organization, way larger than MCPS, probably I would say about 50,000 employees. And we couldn't figure out how to get that video to work. I called Al from Washington, D.C. And Al, I will never forget that. Al figured out a way to make that video work. And I just tell you, he is just simply amazing.
Is Al's position okay in this?
Al's position is absolutely okay in this budget. But I just point that out because when we talk about super valuable people in this organization, and sometimes the things that they do that just goes above and beyond, there's so many of them. But as we're talking about cameras, most people see Al taking care of tech in and around the system, but he's also managing the cameras for all the schools by himself. And so let's just also think about that centrally as we build out the plan for the camera plan overall. Okay, I promise that's it, Mr. Vice Chair, in my comments.
Just to close out with safety and security, again, this is a priority for the board, for the community. What do we have in this budget that addresses safety and security? My concern is that we're doing these community conversations. We're going to have a presentation in April, and then the budget's kind of already cooked. And if we were to need additional resources, so let's just start with, that's a concern of mine. But let's start with what is in the budget that we can say to the public that we are allocating to safety and security. And maybe the answer is we're using existing resources, because every budget doesn't have new things every time. I understand that.
Yes. So I'll address that, Ms. Silvestri. So you are right. The plan, and I went back to June, the plan was that there was the deep dive that would have started with the work so that we would be able to be very declarative about what was needed in that budget. That work was delayed. I have informed and shared that the expectation is that that work is up and going. As you all know, I was out for a couple of months, and I mean, not that that should prevent work from happening, but it is a priority. So what we've done is taken, as the budget teams shared, we're going to get money around safety and security from the grant that we received from the Jewel case. So at this point, what we are doing is we will have that money set aside, and whatever comes out of this deep dive work that we're doing with the community in the way that we need to do it and need to spend the time to do it, then that will then direct what money is utilized for the right purpose. Now, that isn't declarative in this budget process, but it will become declarative because we have the funds there. We just have to be able to say how we're using them. Whatever, even with the legal fees from whatever we get from the Jewel Fund, we will have more than enough to put some more structural pieces in place. And that priority has been shared with Mr. Hall and his team.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So the first part of the question is, we can say to the public that we're putting in any security measures in this budget? I know it's coming, but is there anything currently in the budget as published today?
So there's nothing there, but we have a placeholder, which is what we're saying, which is the jewel money that will dictate what those resources are used for once the work is done in the community, with the community in a way that it needed to be done.
Okay, thank you.
So it will not be a budget issue later. We know where the funding source is coming from. We just need to know what it is that needs to be done.
Thank you. You mentioned the ask of central office, 5% cuts across the board with some adjustments for which offices can take the capacity. What was the directive to schools? I think I know the answer, but I want the.
We didn't have the same directive for schools. They were immune from that ask.
So I wanted the public to understand that the central office is taking a lot of these, well, all of these reductions, 5% in some cases. And then you mentioned that our central office is among the smallest in the state. Do you have an actual number for me that I can use?
We like to use either 2 or 3%, depending on, which, there's different ways to measure that, but it's usually 2 to 3%, and as Mr. Hall mentioned, if not the lowest, one of the lowest in the state.
Love to know what, for number, second lowest, third lowest.
Okay.
Second, I understand. Okay.
We can provide that data.
Yeah, it's just fairly, it's a myth out there that we have a big central office, and it's just not true. It hasn't been true for many years, and so I really want to, use our budget process in the next couple months to debunk that myth. And then to my concluding points is that as we have seen in these 3 budget work sessions, Mr. Said, I will get to you. You'll have the final word. As we have seen in these budget work sessions, it's been about reductions, efficiencies, reductions, efficiencies. And so we are proposing a budget to the county executive and the county council, and we need every penny in it. This is already a skeleton budget. We are hearing from our school communities and our staff, this is really tight. And so want our public to understand the difficult position that we are in this year because of what has happened over the last couple of years. And so really need us to gather as a community to ensure that we get every cent, because this is really, really a skeleton crew for a school system this large. Mr. Said and then Ms. Wolf.
I'll let Ms. Wolf speak because I think you actually had your mic on before I did.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just had a question. Am I mistaken? I thought we were hiring some security assistants, or we were getting some additional security assistance in this budget.
So through the settlement that was talked about earlier, we are increasing the number of full-time staff by 5 or 10, but then also adding subs so that when a security personnel is out at a school, we can plug them in and they're not going to be down a person.
Because when Carla asked the question, I thought you said none, and then I thought I remembered that we had some security assistance in this budget. Are we also, and I know that this has come up several times when we've been out in the community, the elementary schools are just as concerned as the middle and high schools, and they don't have a security assistant in the building. Are we looking at the needs that they might have and considering what we might be able to do for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's some of the feedback that we're hoping to garner through these community conversations and the community of practice as far as what do they really need. I mean, it's, I don't want to say cost prohibitive, but it would be very expensive to have an individual person at each of our elementary schools. But how can we beef up the structure that we have now, which my understanding is new. We didn't even have the rovers previously, and so we've added that layer a couple of years ago, but looking at how we can further expand that to provide that for coverage for our elementary schools.
Sure, I know we don't have money to put in 100 and some odd security assistants, but I do think there has to be some consideration of the concerns that the elementary school principals are raising also. Thank you.
Ms. Wolf, I just wanted to also say, yes, the directive to the community of practice group has been to look at the safety and security needs at elementary, middle, and high, so that we can be very specific about the data that's needed for each of the structures. They're all so different. And looking at the discipline data, the incident data, all of those pieces is also what we're taking into consideration in terms of, and enrollment. taking all those pieces into consideration for what's needed for each level as well. So the goal will be that it comes back broken down by level so that we can look at what we want the experience to be or what we want to change about the experience in each level to complement what we learn.
So then I will ask for a follow-up, since Ms. Wolf remembered these security positions. If you could just look through the chapters and see if there's any other security enhancements that we are making. I think it's important for the board and the community to know.
President Silvestre, there appears to be about 39 positions that this budget will fund in safety and security, in addition to camera purchases, installing, and then the maintenance of the cameras that are already in schools.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Said.
Then, I guess as a last word here, while we're on the topic of safety and security, I will take any chance to mention the resolution passed by the board earlier. And I want to say a big part about this is there are things we can do to improve safety and security that aren't just budget, items. So, that resolution is really looking at, training for students and staff on procedures, an ID policy to ensure that every single student who's entering our high schools, we have a way to confirm their identity. I mean, there are things that we are doing in the system that we don't just have to put money towards, and I want to just emphasize that for the public. And there's a lot of things that we are putting money towards that are coming in future years, and I know with that ID system, we're looking into scanning IDs to make that process more efficient and everything like that, but I just want to reiterate to the public, this is not something that we've waited on. The board took action months ago to focus on safety and security and to push for things that didn't cost money, to not put more strain on the budget, that still enhance safety and security. So just wanted to put that out there again, just so everyone, was aware of that.
Thank you, Mr. Said. Well, thank you again for this the third of our budget work sessions. The board will be convening to kind of process everything we've heard through these work sessions, through public testimony, establish our priorities, and see if there's anything that we want to tweak to the superintendent's budget. Just as a reminder, our follow-ups, we have to time those so that we have that information in order to make some of these decisions. Dr. McKnight, any closing remarks?
Nope, thank you so much for the conversation, the questions, and we will absolutely follow up. We do have another budget hearing from the community, I believe, this Thursday. So, is it this Thursday?
No, we don't.
We finished?
with our hearing.
We only had one? Oh, it's two. Oh, my goodness, they flew by. Okay. So no more budget hearings, but I think even from the hearings, the conversation was really good, because as the board gets ready to prepare or make adjustments for the budget that we take forward to county council, just the conversation at the table, and then, of course, the hearings will just help inform that. So thank you so much. I thank the staff as well for all the work that everyone's done to pull all of the pieces together to build a picture of what this budget will do for the students and the staff and the community in Montgomery County Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. With that, we're adjourned.